welcome to the Badger Politic. I am Scott Stearns.
Yeah, good evening. It's Paul Sickle.
How are you doing, Paul?
Not bad. I'm just hoping we don't have a war with North Korea. And well, apparently some of the Republicans are now sharing my concerns.
Yeah,
such as Bob, is it Bob Corker, senator from Tennessee, who I've truly despised, by the way.
Yeah, he really hasn't been a friend over the years.
He was terrible. I mean, very anti-union to a real fault. But he and Trump, and he was a real Trump shill last year. But he and Trump have had a falling out, apparently.
Yeah.
It's right now. It's October 10th, and so earlier. In the last couple of days, Trump was taking us to World War III.
Yeah, I mean, he's been kind of hinting at how he hasn't been professional. He hasn't, basically given the citizenry confidence in his abilities, and so. Again, he's retiring. He's not running again.
Right.
So which
is liberating the Senate, man.
It is, but it's. The thing is that why is it requiring a senator to retire to voice these kinds of concerns? Because he's obviously not alone. Mm-hmm. But there's this pack mentality where nobody wants to kind of step outside the boundaries,
right,
of what I guess the body politic of the Republican Party, because there's acceptable dialogue.
He says that his opinion is mainstream within the Republican caucus.
Yeah.
So there's some talk that this could be a sign that Trump's legislative agenda may be in trouble.
You think? I mean, what legislative agenda?
Well, obviously the tax cuts, and it's important though because there's a backdoor way of kind of repealing Obamacare yet again coming up.
Yes,
I've heard it called synthetic repeal or fake repeal, but it's actually quite real in some ways. So. Trump's about to issue an executive order, which will almost certainly be destructive toward the individual healthcare markets. Hopefully, and I'm not familiar with all the ins and outs of how it works.
Yeah.
And I wonder if he'll do it in a way that it looks like he did it, but there's still an out that allows the markets to somehow survive.
Sure.
Hopefully. This will probably undo the momentum, though, toward the Alexander compromise with, Patty Murray. Murray and Alexander. Patty Murray's a Democrat working with Lamar Alexander.
She's from Washington State.
Another moderate, conservative, pretty conservative senator from
I wouldn't consider it conservative.
Tennessee.
Oh, you mean, Lamar Alexander. Yeah,
Patty Murray's good.
Yeah.
Real good in the Senate as a Democrat. So... there's that, and then the 1-2 punch. The real punch in the gut comes from gutting Medicaid in the budget, and doing that to support the tax cuts. The tax cuts I've been told. I saw somewhere on the crawl while watching coverage of Trump's insanity and Harvey Weinstein's meltdown.
Yeah.
Senate insiders are saying there's no way this will derail the Republican agenda because if it's in their interest, they're going to pass it anyway. And that this is a personality fight, not a fight over policy.
Maybe, but I mean, it still comes down to numbers. Just given how close healthcare came to passing and failed by. I mean, the same fate could happen with the tax cuts, and I mean, you still have conservatives like Rand Paul that are not necessarily on board with the approach that they're taking with this thing.
McCain, I believe, deserted the Republicans on the tax cut bill under Bush, the Bush tax cuts, because he thought they were bad for the deficit.
He was one of only two votes, only two Republicans to vote against against President Bush's $1.35 trillion 10-year tax cut. So
so he was a no.
Yeah,
there you go. Obviously, some of that was bad blood, between McCain and Bush, who had just shellacked him in the previous year's primaries, and McCain holds a grudge. If nothing else is clear about McCain, he holds a grudge. He was not too kind to Obama either during those years, and
Well,
I know he doesn't like Trump.
And
McCain never likes the president. Basically,
Right.
if you're president, McCain doesn't like you.
Well, and that was May of 2001 when they were working on that. So pre 9/11, that was out of the gate. That was what Bush was working on, was the tax cut.
Right, and McCain said no.
Yeah, and 2 years later, he voted against it because they had a second round of tax cuts.
Bush tax cut too,
and he was then one of 3 Republicans to vote against it because the cost of the Iraq War was not yet known.
Right.
He said it was too tilted to the wealthy.
This is when you were working in the Senate, at least the first vote.
Yeah.
The first vote's a pre 9/11 vote.
Yep. I remember it well.
So it goes to show that there's at least one vote among the 3 healthcare people that could vote no.
Well, potentially.
Well, I mean, there's pretty strong precedent for it on this one. I mean, this wouldn't be him going out on a limb, really. This would be like him just doing what he does.
No, I'm just, what I would say is I don't take anything for granted when it comes to
I don't take it for granted. I'm just saying that would be one which may vote no.
Sure.
The question is, does Murkowski probably goes for it. Just the oil industry people.
Collins, I think Susan Collins, who's the other moderate from Maine.
She might go no.
She might go no. She's ramping up. She's
running for governor.
She's supposed to announce on Friday whether or not she's running for governor of Maine, which would take her out of the Senate if she were to win next year, and then I think
open up yet another seat.
Right.
Which brings us to the liberalization of the Senate map, so to speak. That means that Republicans would actually be defending one more seat. However, one thing that helps with campaigns is money. And one of the best campaign fundraisers on our side, this was, like Colbert said, doing some equal time.
Yeah.
One of our best fundraisers and bundlers is Harvey Weinstein. And boy, what a meltdown that is, my friend.
It is. I mean, Harvey Weinstein.
Apparently, the damage was done many years ago, though. So to say it's a meltdown is wrong. It's
right.
Comeuppance, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's getting a lot of coverage this week. Obviously, I mean, it's the revelations it's really bad. I mean,
yeah, it's sick.
It's just he's obviously a sick individual who just is one of these old powerful men in powerful circles, and who just gets his kicks by taking advantage of his position, and it's just he's obviously not alone. There are lots of others that do the same thing.
So the major stories broke. Well, the first was broken by the New York Times, but then the New Yorker was working with it. I think they were competing against each other.
Yeah.
And the reporter who broke it, interestingly enough, is Ronan Farrow, who is Woody Allen's son.
Interesting.
And he's by the way, he was one of the very young children. I don't believe he directly accused Woody Allen of molestation, but he cannot stand Woody Allen. So it's just interesting how another Hollywood, not quite a mogul, but a very influential filmmaker. But it's interesting. These powerful institutions is what I heard. Hollywood is one, and apparently this is a big problem in Hollywood.
Yeah,
we've seen it in politics. We've seen it in big media, especially conservative media, such as Fox News, which is why I find the whole thing really ridiculous when I hear all this clamoring about, well, the Democrats got all this dirty money from Harvey Weinstein, and they should return every dollar that Weinstein ever gave them.
Right.
Did he ever help them raise? Okay, so first of all, what if Weinstein raised money? He might have gave it to UNICEF or the Red Cross while they're dealing, with Puerto Rico. Should they give the money back too?
Yeah,
I mean that's ridiculous. And the second thing is, do they not remember who their president is?
Yeah,
I mean, not that his stuff rises to the same level, but come on.
Well, as far as we know.
Well, right, and think about Bill O'Reilly.
Yeah, Bill O'Reilly, Roger Ailes. I mean,
right, those guys. Yeah,
it's not unique. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with what
the Mercer family that supports race baiting. Milo, who's an open Nazi sympathizer.
Right.
I mean, you know.
Well, you could also bring up the clergy, and there are a lot of powerful institutions out there where there are bad people that take advantage of their power and use it over others.
Right.
And so this is just another example of that. And Harvey Weinstein is somebody that needs to be called out. He needs to go away, and he needs to.
Granted, the Democrats should get a new fundraiser, a replacement fundraiser, but hopefully, there's times like these have challenged enough people of good conscience in Hollywood and elsewhere to become more active. By the way, one of the things I talked about with the healthcare thing, you know, how they are diminishing the exchange, sign-up periods and the information about signing up for the exchanges.
Yep. Yeah, they're cutting open enrollment in half, and then they're getting rid of all the education.
And I said a number of foundations need to step up and fill the gap. That's starting to happen.
It is.
I don't have all the data in front of me, but I've certainly heard. Do you know anything about that?
I haven't. I mean, we talked about it a month or so ago about how it's important that in order to fill the gap, so to speak, on the funding that the administration is pulling for promotion and education,
right?
And it's,
which is not a huge amount of money,
but it's important, especially when you're dealing with
getting the word out.
Of course, I mean, especially when you're dealing with low education, consumers who don't understand the system, don't really know what their rights are, what they're able to get in terms of benefits, and it's critical that there is this outreach. And so if the Department of Health and Human Services isn't going to provide the funding for it, then somebody else needs to step up.
Right. Well, the reason I said it's not a huge amount of money is it's the kind of money that private industry or private charities can raise. Mm-hmm. It's realistic to raise, we're talking about $100, maybe $200 million, which sounds like a lot of money, but that's not.
You're talking on a national scale.
On the philanthropic world, and it's stuff that can be co-branded. One of the things I really got to shout out to, and I've been actually, my child's been a patient there, an outpatient there, but thank goodness so far. Children's Hospital Wisconsin.
Yeah.
They did a nice job right before Graham Cassidy was being voted on pointing out how their services really do use Medicaid. Good for them.
Yeah.
Because they try to stay very apolitical and all that. And mostly that makes sense for a healthcare provider, but good for them for saying, hey, you know what? On this one, we can't do the work we do with Graham Cassidy.
Yeah.
Not nearly at the level we do it. Not nearly as many people will be helped.
Right.
And we're talking about children.
Absolutely.
So that's good on them for stepping up. They put a good Facebook post out. I just saw that was advertised content. So we need more of that.
Yes.
Step up to the plate, philanthropists. Yes. Let's get this done.
Yes.
And keep America healthy despite this, a lot of people working against it. Another hopeful thing is, the reports that came out today that Trump's approval rating has declined in all 50 states to date.
Yes, he's been hemorrhaging, rural voters, which is kind of his core constituency. When you look at it, here in Wisconsin, where did he clean up? He cleaned up in historically Democratic turf. When you're talking about western and northwestern Wisconsin.
By cleaning up, we mean he got 50% instead of 30%, which is typical for Republicans in some of those areas.
It still shows up red on the map,
right?
And that's a
well, right, like Douglas County, which is where Superior is.
Yep.
Trump got, I think, 44%. I think somewhere in there, almost within 10 points. And ordinarily, I think Obama and Romney were 68 to 32.
Okay.
Some huge, almost like at least a 30-point gap, and then it closed to a 10-point gap. Mm-hmm. And you saw that repeated in a lot of areas in western Wisconsin, all over Iowa.
Yeah.
All over, even parts of Ohio and upstate New York, places like that too.
That's how I was able to put it together. That's how that's how I got it done. Was just
Michigan
eating into all that,
and then lower turnout than expected or needed in urban areas along with that. So it looks like one of the big things that we saw in the graphic I was just looking at was he had a low honeymoon.
Yeah, it did not last long.
In Wisconsin, even his number was low. It was he had a 49% approval rating to 39% disapproval at inauguration. That's a small. Almost every president beats 60% for the first few days. That's a bad honeymoon.
You typically come in and I mean that's your high point, and everybody wants their president to succeed. Right. I mean, on some level, you don't want a failure.
Well, and if you didn't look at the arguments over the crowd size at the inauguration, or any of the messaging from the Women's March, or listen to any of the stupid things about American carnage, or as George W. Bush called some weird shit.
Yeah.
When he said it to Hillary. Mm-hmm. As former President Bush said, I said, some weird shit.
Yeah.
If you didn't listen to any of that, it looked good. Mm-hmm. So that's when your approval should be the highest of the incoming president.
That should be at the peak.
So yeah, Trump enjoyed a 49% approval rating versus 39% disapproval in January, which was a plus 10. Okay. So that is his peak. It just was a very low peak compared to Presidents Obama, Bush, both Bushes, Reagan, you name it, Clinton, Carter, going all the way back to Nixon, Kennedy, any time they've been polling.
So you fast forward a few months.
But yeah, he had a plus 10, and now he's, I think nationally, he's down by about 11 points in the polls, according to Morning Consult. Morning Consult says he has a 42% approval, 53% disapproval. So overall, his margin, his net approval is down 21 points.
That's pretty significant.
He went from being plus 10 to down minus 11.
Yeah.
In Wisconsin, it went from plus 6 down to minus 12.
Yeah.
So
that's a pretty big drop.
Yeah. So if you factor in the fact that I was trying to do the bump, factor in the bump, because it's not like he lost 18 points since in Wisconsin. It's that he lost on the margins from an election, which he carried it narrowly. So anyway, you got to look at it that way. I'm looking at Wisconsin. He would probably get about 46% of the vote in a two-way race against the generic Democrat right now.
Well, I think you figure
even Hillary, he'd probably get not much more than that.
Well, the last Marquette poll that we have for on Walker's approval rating for governor is he's at 48. So
that's 3 months ago.
Right? Yeah, and so I think that's fair. If you were to say, if you factor in just the fact that I think Walker's, as a Republican, is more popular than Trump, you probably take away at least a few points.
So NBC Marist had Trump down at 34% in the state, and near the end of August. So about a month and a half ago. They had him at 34. They had Walker. They did approval rating, or not approval. They did favorable on Walker. Favorable. They had among registered voters, it was 40% favorable, 53% unfavorable for Walker. So, which is roughly about what approval usually is.
And that's about the time when the whole Foxconn thing was kind of heating up.
Right. So Walker's probably a little underwater, but clearly better than Trump.
Yes, I think he's more of an institutional Republican. So he's the party loyalists are gonna, given the choice, they're gonna go with a guy like Walker over Trump any day.
So all of this aims at on the national scene a generic ballot that favors the Democrats by at least 8 or 9 points. Mm-hmm. That in theory could be enough to take the House. But very narrowly.
Sure. Well, just given the gerrymandering that we're fighting,
right?
So.
Right. That's the problem. You need to be at least, I think, the Democrats 5 to 6 points up in the overall generic vote. Last year, I think they lost it by 2 points.
Yeah.
So if they can outpoll by 5 or 6 percentage points, which is what they did in 2006, they would gain just barely enough to take the majority.
Right.
When they took the majority in 2006, they got a bigger effect from the same.
Well, and I mean, related to that, so because I mentioned gerrymandering, and obviously we touched on it last week, the whole Supreme Court case that is going on to review the districts in Wisconsin. So that case will have repercussions across the country in terms of who's responsible for drawing districts, how they do it, what's the criteria, what are the rules, what are the boundaries. And I don't know. I don't think that we'll have a decision that will impact the 2018 results, because it'll probably, the decision will be months away, and it's probably not feasible to put this in place for the next year.
The Supremes could probably put some sort of provision that effectively it has to be done, at the next
after
time
November elections.
That you can do, that you can apportion it. So, which means you'll have one cycle.
Yeah.
Now, the upside of that is the Democrats could win more chambers for the next set of redistricting.
Right.
The downside is if they actually won more chambers and had a say in redistricting, they may have a harder time districting to their own advantage.
Yeah. Well,
so they're
but that's okay. I mean, I'm fine with that. I mean, we have to. I think we have to think long term, and we've been playing this game for a long time, and it's got and the technology now is such that they've been able to micromanage redistricting to such an extent that it's become very problematic, and Wisconsin is a great example of that.
They redraw wards, which is really, really manipulative in my opinion. And a ward in Wisconsin is about 2,000 voters, or 2,000 people usually on average. And so you start redrawing wards too. I mean, it'd be like it's the smallest unit of apportionment in the state in Wisconsin. You start redrawing those every 10 years, then you really are slicing and dicing the electorate in ways that are pretty questionable. I would think you should at least keep the original wards and make them add up to an amount.
Yeah.
That would be one thing they could do. I doubt that argument got heard. That would be kind of a granular argument, but it's something to think about.
Well, I guess, I'll just throw it out there. I mean, like I said, we summarized it a little bit last week, but all eyes are on Anthony Kennedy right now. I guess everybody's assuming that we're starting with a 4-4 situation with Kennedy potentially siding with
the majority, with the
four liberal justices,
which would be Ginsburg, Breyer, Sotomayor, and Sotomayor.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and then maybe, I think the only other wild card would be maybe Roberts, but I think Alito, Gorsuch, and Thomas they're going to be firm against this.
So bringing that back here, we've got what could be a tight race for governor if you had a strong candidate against Walker. Mm-hmm. I also wonder if Walker fatigue, third term might set in as well as tying him to Trump. I think that usually the midterm elections are proxy vote on the incumbent president. Mm-hmm. The incumbent president is not probably the friend of a swing state leader for a Republican.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I think it remains to be seen what the impact of this Foxconn deal is going to be, and how big of a campaign issue it's going to be. I think Walker's going to play it up as jobs. I think it could potentially win him the Racine County, Kenosha County. I mean, it's gonna play.
Which he's gonna win. I mean, he probably would win Racine County anyway. But the question is. We have to remember these are very close counties. The question is, how much does he win?
Well, that's the thing. And I think if you look back to previous gubernatorial races, going back to Jim Doyle and Tommy Thompson, what did those counties look like come election day?
Yeah, I believe.
Tommy obviously ran away.
Right, Racine. Even when Doyle won, I believe, Racine very narrowly went Republican. Kenosha went Democrat.
Okay.
By about 10 points.
Yeah.
So, obviously, the question would be if you blunt that you keep Kenosha very narrowly Republican, make Racine Republican by 10 points. If you can get that, then Walker will have done well with the Foxconn deal.
Yeah. Then the wild card is just what's the outstate resentment for the fact that everybody in the state is paying for this thing.
Right, you put Racine and Kenosha County together, it's just larger than 2 Senate districts, so it's like 2 out of 33 people in the state live down there.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like that's 6% of the population lives in those 2 counties. 15% lives in Milwaukee County alone. And I think the support for Foxconn ends at Ryan Road.
Pretty much.
Right when we're seeing, right at that flying J.
That's why I think it
maybe
is.
Maybe even below Ryan Road a little bit.
It is. I think it's a smart issue for any Democrat running for governor here, in terms of your outstate voters.
I'm going to say Foxconn support goes to about 7 Mile Road.
Okay.
That's about, it does include the Mars Cheese Castle, but it won't get you quite to the airport here in Milwaukee.
For those of you who have driven the I-94 corridor between Milwaukee and Chicago, you know exactly what Paul's talking about. So, other gubernatorial news. Matt Flynn is throwing his hat into the ring.
Yeah, well, I've seen him throw for the Packers over the years. He was a good quarterback as a backup for Rodgers. I think he threw 6 touchdowns.
Well, I think if that Matt Flynn were running,
this one.
Maybe that would be better. But
this one's got some hair, though.
You
gotta love his haircut.
He does have nice hair.
Ted Koppel called and he wants the haircut back.
So yeah, Matt Flynn he was former head of the state party at one point, and then he's a practicing attorney and
retired.
He is retired now. He's run for Congress a few times. He did actually run for the seat currently occupied by Gwen Moore when Jerry Kletchka retired. And the late Jerry Kletchka, I should mention, who passed away.
He spent a lot of money, and he got 25% in the 4-way race.
Yeah, So I don't know. I don't know if he does much better this time around. There's the critique out of the gates for him was the fact that he was an attorney involved in
defending the diocese.
Yes, the archdiocese against accusations of
that could hurt. I don't think it's that big of a one. I don't think that's their best argument because it's so long ago.
Right. It's not the headline that you want coming out of the gates.
No, but Flynn, yeah. I mean, I also just don't think. I just don't know that he hasn't proven. He's never won an election. I mean, he was a state party chair, and I guess he was a pretty good state party chair. They said, but a long time ago.
Yeah.
I mean, he lost the Senate races in the '80s, and the '90s, and then in the '90s he lost some election. So,
he's run a few.
In the '70s, I don't know. He loses a lot of elections.
Right. So I don't know why we would consider now his time. I guess.
Yeah.
Where's the calling for him?
The one thing he's got going for him is a fractured Democratic field.
True.
And a lot of candidates that don't really have a whole lot going for them either.
Yeah.
Michael Horn did a nice rundown. On
Urban Milwaukee.
I thought he was a little dismissive of my favorite candidate, which is Malin Mitchell, but he pointed out that Mitchell led the crowd, and Chance and got people fired up. Mm-hmm. So, there was a meeting of the Alliance for Retired Americans, and almost all the Democratic governor candidates spoke. So that was pretty interesting. Except I
don't think
Vinehout did not appear, and she didn't send a surrogate, which is like, once again, when people keep talking about Vinehout, that's something you got to be at.
Yeah.
And so people keep talking about Vinehout as this difference maker. She can't run a credible campaign. And my fear with her isn't that, my fear is that in a fractured primary she could actually get the nomination and then just go up and get destroyed by Walker because she would have no organization. Yeah. And not being able to make it to the ARA convention or send a surrogate is...
Well, that's
lousy.
Bad. I mean, it's bad optics if nothing else.
Right.
One of the first.
Dana Wax sent a surrogate. I mean, Pat Kreitlow was incredibly boring, but at least he sent a surrogate.
Right. So, I mean, I expect the field to probably continue to get crowded. I think there's probably at least a few more candidates that will announce yet this year. And then and if they're going to run, they probably should announce this year because otherwise the resources of fundraising are going to start getting locked up. So
it sounds good. Yeah. All right. Well, with that, till next year, provided that we keep Trump's hands off of doing really bad, destructive things to America or the world, or getting Kim Jong-un into something awful. In honor of next year, not till next year, but looking forward to that, I say forward.
Forward.